Hello, esteemed gentlemen, beware the man who walks alone, for he has mastered the silence that others fear. Most people fear monsters lurking in the shadows. But the truth is, the real danger isn't in the darkness, it is the darkness. And when a Sigma male goes dark, he doesn't just disappear, he becomes something else entirely. Something unpredictable, something terrifying. Here's a brutal fact. The most dangerous individuals in history weren't the loudest, but the quiet ones who moved with purpose, without warning and without remorse. From lone revolutionaries to strategic masterminds, the world has always underestimated the man who chooses isolation over conformity. But what happens when a Sigma male, the lone wolf of society, decides to embrace his most ruthless instincts? When he stops caring about fitting in, playing fair, or even following his own rules? Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Get ready, because once a Sigma male goes dark, the world around him will never be the same. And if you think you've seen everything, think again. Number 1. He gains an almost supernatural level of patience. A dark Sigma male understands something most people never grasp. Time is the ultimate weapon. He doesn't rush, doesn't act out of impulse, and never plays his hand too soon. While others crave instant gratification, he operates on a completely different wavelength. He can wait days, months, even years, knowing that patience always rewards those who master it. This isn't just about sitting still, it's about strategic silence, controlled inaction, and the art of letting things unfold exactly as he wants them to. He knows that emotions make people reckless, they react, they panic, they expose their weaknesses. But he watches, he studies, he learns every flaw, every pressure point, every hidden crack in the system. And when the time comes to strike, he does so with the precision of a surgeon. He never needs to force outcomes. He plants ideas, manipulates circumstances, and lets other people's own impatience destroy them. He understands that the most effective power moves don't feel like attacks, they feel like fate. By the time his enemies realize what's happening, they're already trapped in a web they didn't even see being spun. And here's the chilling part. He doesn't need validation, credit, or even recognition. He thrives in the knowledge that he's always 5 steps ahead, that his influence is shaping events in ways others will never suspect. To the outside world, he looks indifferent, detached, almost absent. But in reality, he's pulling every string, patiently waiting for the perfect moment when everything and everyone falls exactly where he wants them. Number 2. He cuts ties without a second thought. A dark Sigma male sees attachment as nothing more than a chain, one that weakens his freedom, clouds his judgment, and exposes him to unnecessary vulnerabilities. Unlike most people who wrestle with emotions, guilt, or second thoughts, he has none. The moment he decides a connection is no longer beneficial, it's severed instantly. No warnings, no explanations, just silence. To him, relationships, whether friendships, romantic bonds, or even family ties, are conditional engagements, not unbreakable obligations. If loyalty is betrayed, if expectations become a burden, or if he simply outgrows the dynamic, he vanishes without hesitation. He doesn't argue, he doesn't offer closure, he doesn't care about how others interpret his disappearance. His actions aren't about cruelty, they're about efficiency. People left behind often struggle to understand why. They overanalyze, seek explanations, or assume he'll return, but he won't. Once he's gone, he's gone. Not out of spite, not as a game, but because his mind has already moved on. He doesn't romanticize the past, doesn't dwell on what-ifs, and never second-guesses his choices. To him, emotional detachment isn't just a survival skill, it's a way of life. And if you ever find yourself on the receiving end of his silence, know this. You were never truly a part of his world, you were just passing through. Number 3. He develops a predator mentality. When a Sigma male goes dark, he no longer plays by the rules of ordinary men. He stops being just a quiet observer in the background and starts moving with purpose, calculating, stalking, and striking only when necessary. His mindset shifts from passive to predatory, seeing the world in stark terms, those who control and those who are controlled. He no longer wastes time on meaningless interactions, trivial emotions, or pointless conflicts. If something or someone does not serve his goals, they cease to exist in his mind. But if someone stands in his way, the response is not loud, emotional, or reckless. It is cold, methodical, and designed for maximum impact. He does not brawl like an undisciplined fool. He dismantles with surgical precision. Psychologically, he understands fear, pressure, and human weakness better than most. He knows exactly what buttons to press to unravel an opponent's mind. A single word, a glance, or even silence at the right moment can make others second-guess themselves, panic, or crumble. If you're his target, you won't see an explosion of rage. You'll feel an unnerving shift like a storm approaching, subtle but inevitable. Physically, he moves differently. His posture, his presence, his entire aura changes. There's no wasted motion, no unnecessary words. He conserves energy, calculates his next step, and waits for his moment. And when he finally acts, it's already too late for the other person to react. The world underestimates a dark Sigma because he is not the loudest, the flashiest, or the most obvious threat. But make no mistake, once he decides to eliminate a problem, it's no longer a matter of if, but when. Number 4. He becomes impossible to control. A dark Sigma male is a nightmare for anyone who thrives on control because he is completely untouchable. He doesn't bow to authority, doesn't conform to expectations, and doesn't fall for the usual tricks of manipulation. The moment someone tries to force him into submission, whether through power, guilt, or social pressure, he doesn't resist directly. He simply disengages. You can't trap a man who refuses to play the game. Rules don't bind him, opinions don't sway him, and threats don't intimidate him. Unlike most people who seek validation, security, or approval, he seeks nothing from anyone. And that's what makes him so dangerous. He is immune to the very things that keep the average person in line. If laws conflict with his own logic, he finds a way around them. If someone tries to manipulate him emotionally, they're met with a blank stare and complete indifference. If society demands that he follow a path he doesn't respect, he vanishes and forges his own. The more pressure applied, the more unpredictable he becomes, adapting like water, slipping through cracks, reshaping himself, and always staying one step ahead. To those who crave control, he's an enigma, untouchable, unreadable, and completely out of reach. They'll never understand why their usual methods don't work on him, why their threats fall on deaf ears, or why their attempts at guilt-tripping are met with cold amusement. A dark Sigma doesn't fight for control. He simply takes it by refusing to be controlled at all. Number 5. He learns to harness the power of fear. A dark Sigma male doesn't fear the things that keep most people awake at night: loss, failure, rejection, or the unknown. He has already faced them, embraced them, and come out the other side untouched. But while he no longer experiences fear in the way others do, he understands it better than anyone. And instead of avoiding it, he learns to wield it like a weapon, like a tool, like a silent force that bends reality to his will. Unlike loud, aggressive men who try to impose fear through brute force, a dark Sigma is far more subtle and unsettling. He doesn't need to yell, threaten, or posture. His power comes from his unpredictability, his unreadable nature, his ability to make people second-guess themselves with nothing more than a calculated pause or an emotionless stare. The silence he leaves in conversations, that's not absence, it's a trap, making others squirm in discomfort, forcing them to reveal their own insecurities before he ever has to make a move. He knows that fear doesn't come from direct threats, it comes from doubt, uncertainty, and the feeling of being powerless. So he lets people wonder. He lets their imagination fill in the blanks. He allows their own paranoia to do the work for him. He makes his presence felt, not explained, and when the time comes to strike, he does so in a way that leaves no room for retaliation. He doesn't just make people afraid of him, he makes them afraid of what he might do next. That uncertainty, that inability to predict his next move, is what keeps them up at night. Fear is no longer his enemy, it's his ally, his currency, his signature. Number 6, he destroys weakness in himself and others. A dark Sigma male has no patience for weakness, not in himself, not in others, not in the world around him. He sees vulnerability as a liability, something that makes people easy to control, easy to break, and easy to manipulate, so he eliminates it, ruthlessly, methodically, and without hesitation. In himself, this means cutting off anything that could be exploited. Emotional attachments, gone. Hesitation, eliminated. Doubt, buried 6 feet deep. He doesn't allow fear, regret, or sentimentality to slow him down. Every weakness is identified, confronted, and destroyed, leaving behind something cold, sharp, and completely untouchable. But he doesn't stop there. When he encounters weakness in others, he reacts in one of 2 ways. He either forces them to evolve, or he abandons them completely. If he sees potential, he pushes. Hard. No sugarcoating, no comfort, no hand-holding. Just brutal, unfiltered truth designed to strip away illusions and force them to either rise or break. If they survive, they come out stronger. If they don't, he doesn't care. For those unwilling to change, he has no sympathy. He won't waste time with excuses, emotional crutches, or fragile egos. If someone chooses weakness, they are dead weight, and he walks away without a second thought. No guilt, no explanation, just silence. This is why he's feared, respected, and often misunderstood. He's not heartless, he's just unwilling to tolerate anything that slows him down. And if that makes him ruthless, so be it. Number 7, he becomes an entity, not a person. A dark Sigma male does not seek recognition, validation, or even acknowledgement. He moves beyond the concept of being just another man in the crowd. He erases his identity, his predictability, and even his humanity in the eyes of others, until he is no longer seen as a person, but as a force. His presence lingers, even when he's gone. People speak of him in hushed tones, trying to understand his motives, his movements, his next steps, but they never truly can. He is a ghost, a shadow, a myth that people fear but cannot fully grasp. The moment they think they've figured him out, he shifts again, staying one step ahead, untouchable, untraceable. He does not crave fame or power in the way others do. He does not seek followers, nor does he demand loyalty. Instead, his mere existence bends reality around him. His absence speaks louder than his presence. His actions ripple long after he has moved on. Those who have crossed his path, whether as allies or enemies, are never the same again. You cannot threaten, control, or manipulate what you cannot define, and that is what makes him terrifying. He is not a man bound by rules, but an idea that cannot be caught, confronted, or destroyed. He does not just disappear, he dissolves into legend. Number 8, he develops a high-stakes, no-limits mindset. A dark Sigma male reaches a point where nothing holds him back anymore. Not fear, not failure, not even survival itself. He fully embraces the brutal truth that everything in life is temporary. Money, status, relationships, even existence itself. And because of that, he plays the game differently than anyone else. While others hesitate, calculating risks and fearing consequences, he moves with absolute certainty. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't second-guess, and he doesn't back down, because in his mind there is no such thing as too far, too dangerous, or too impossible. Where most people fear loss, he sees opportunity. Where they fold under pressure, he pushes forward. This mindset makes him unpredictable, unstoppable, and nearly impossible to manipulate. You cannot scare a man who has already accepted every possible outcome, including destruction. Threats don't work on him, bribes are meaningless, pleas for mercy fall on deaf ears. He is willing to burn everything down, including himself, if it means winning on his terms. This terrifies those who try to oppose him. They rely on the fact that most people will pull back when the stakes get too high, but he doesn't. He thrives in chaos, in uncertainty, in situations where others crumble. The more extreme the challenge, the more he leans in, embracing the danger, knowing that fear itself is what keeps others weak. And that's what makes him a nightmare. He is the one man who will never break, because he has already accepted that there is nothing to break. Number 9, he no longer believes in redemption. A dark Sigma male has abandoned the very concept of redemption. To him, it's a fantasy, a comforting lie that weak people tell themselves to avoid the truth. Redemption is for those who need forgiveness, who are burdened by guilt, who still believe in the possibility of change. He, on the other hand, has moved beyond all that. He doesn't care about being saved, about finding some moral high ground, or about proving anything to anyone. He knows exactly who he is, flaws, mistakes, and all. And instead of trying to undo the past or seek forgiveness, he embraces it fully. He's no longer afraid of the consequences of his actions because he understands one brutal truth. There is no such thing as escaping the consequences. So instead of running from them, he faces them head-on with cold resolve and owns every part of himself, no matter how dark. The idea of redemption is weakness in his eyes. It implies a longing to return to innocence, a desire to erase past mistakes. But a dark Sigma has no illusions. He has shed any need for purity or redemption because he sees it as nothing more than a crutch for those who can't live with their own choices. He has accepted the fact that he is flawed, dangerous, and imperfect, and that's what makes him stronger. To him, there's no need for atonement, no need for reconciliation with the past. He is who he is, and that is enough. Any attempt to change, to fix, or to redeem himself would be an admission of weakness, and he's long since moved past that. Number 10. He refines the art of psychological warfare. A dark Sigma male doesn't rely on brute force to get what he wants. He refines the art of psychological warfare until it becomes second nature. While others are distracted by surface-level actions, he dives deep into the human psyche, studying behavior, emotions, fears, and desires like a chess master studying his opponent's next move. He knows exactly what makes people tick, what pushes their buttons, and how to manipulate the most vulnerable parts of their mind. His words are no longer just words. They are precision tools, carefully crafted to provoke, disorient, or control. Every sentence is a calculated strike, each one designed to sow doubt, twist reality, or plant seeds of insecurity. But it's not just his words that hold power. His silence is just as dangerous. He understands that sometimes what isn't said can be even more effective than anything spoken aloud. A pause, a deliberate lack of response, a look that lingers just a bit too long. These subtle moves can leave others scrambling for meaning, questioning their every action, and losing their grip on reality. He doesn't just engage in physical battles, he destroys minds. He's an expert in manipulation and control, a master of knowing when to push, when to pull back, and when to utterly destabilize someone's sense of self. Fear becomes a tool he uses to dominate, and he's a perfectionist in making others question their own judgment until they are left vulnerable to his influence. In a world where most people fight with their fists, he fights with their minds, and he wins. A dark Sigma male doesn't simply exist in the world, he commands it, reshaping the very fabric of reality around him with every calculated step. He is not a product of society, nor is he bound by its rules. His power comes from his unrelenting authenticity, his refusal to conform, and his absolute mastery over his own mind and actions. In embracing darkness, he becomes a force that cannot be ignored, a presence that others either fear or envy but never truly understand. He doesn't seek approval, nor does he wait for permission. He carves his own path, regardless of the obstacles in his way. Where others break under pressure, he thrives in it, for he has already accepted that the world isn't kind, and it doesn't owe anyone anything. It is a place where the strong survive, and the weak fade into the background. And the dark Sigma male doesn't just survive, he dominates. The moment he goes dark, he transcends the ordinary and becomes something far more dangerous, an entity, an unstoppable force, untouched by the limitations of time, expectation, or fear. He is a phenomenon, and to oppose him is to step into a world where the stakes are always too high, where survival is uncertain, and where only those with the strength to evolve can endure. In the end, it is not the darkness he embraces that makes him terrifying, it is the fact that he has already mastered it. And when he moves, the world moves with him. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed the raw power, the incredible depth, and the absolute dominance of a dark Sigma male. And if this kind of content resonates with you, if you crave more insights into the minds of the extraordinary and the unstoppable, then don't just sit back, take action. Hit that subscribe button and join a community of people who refuse to follow the crowd. By subscribing, you're not just getting videos, you're unlocking a front row seat to a world where the rules are rewritten, where power is redefined, and where the limits of possibility are shattered. So go ahead, subscribe now, and stay tuned for more content that will change the way you see the world. This journey is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.